Oil paintings that could kill. Did Albrecht and Margaret Durer poison their customers with their paintings? Part 2 by Dr. Elizabeth Gardner and Joe Kiernan. Copyright January 2014. Poisoned paintings. In part 1 of the series, you were informed how poisonous the pigments were that Albrecht and Margaret Durer had been using in their paintings, especially the reds, the greens, blues, whites, yellows, and the blacks. And we learned that German curators had already established that many of the paintings were overpainted, thus not sealing off the poison pigments by either those who were jealous or understood the cipher and wished to cover it up, or they were just bad restorers. Even if a Durer sealed a painting, all they would have to do is overpaint it on the sealed coat the poisoned clients. Just even a little bit. Or if any paintings were covered with new pigments to conceal any trace of the cipher by others who realized that there were clues or were doing some restoration, the new paint would be sitting on the surface in brilliant fashion, poisoning by the day. German curators already proved that there are many areas of overpainting in the Durer paintings. Were any paintings unsealed or overpainted and unsealed? The answer is yes. Even if a Durer sealed a painting, all they would have to do is overpaint it on the sealed coat to poison their clients, just a little bit. Or any of the paintings were covered with new pigments to conceal the ciphers. Who the Durers hated, as shown by the colors, you were going to see who the Durers hated as obviously shown by the colors he selected, starting from the end of his life. There are too many paintings that the Durers made sure were poisonous, but there are so many paintings we will only be given some of the top most obvious examples in the second part to continue into the next part, part 3. At the end of Durer's life, near the very end, on October 6th, 1526, Durer painted a fantastic painting with 4 individuals in the painting. It is known as the 4 Apostles. Durer did not paint these 4 on commission. It was he who wanted to donate them to Nuremberg, his native city. The 4 holy men to the city fathers of Nuremberg. I have been intending for a long time past to show my respect for your excellencies in the presentation of some humble picture of mine as a remembrance. But I have been prevented from doing so from the imperfections and insignificance of my work. Now, however, that I have just painted a panel upon which I bestowed more trouble than on any other painting, I considered none more worthy to be kept as a memorial than your excellencies. As it was common in many cities in Italy to bestow the town hall with a work of art that would serve as an example of a buon governo, so did Durer. He wanted to prove to his native city with a work of that he had purposely made to his end. The council greatly accepted the gift, hanging the works in the upper government chamber of the city hall. Durer was awarded an honorarium of 100 florins. The 4 monumental figures remained in the municipality of Nuremberg until the year 1627, when, following threats of repression, they had to be sold to the Elector of Bavaria, Maximilian I, a great enthusiast of Durer. On that occasion, however, the prince had the inscriptions at the bottom of the paintings sawed off and sent back to Nuremberg, as they were considered heretical and injurious to his position in the sovereign Catholic. The city handed them over to the museum in Munich in 1922, where they were rejoined with their respective panels. Notice that these paintings are almost all lead white, vermilions and green, orpiment, and black. Albrecht really wanted to take revenge on the whole new government, the city council, where every day they would be inhaling noxious fumes. He even donated them. And he got paid for it, but it was post fact. The Way to Calvary, 1527, made for Emperor Charles V. 1527, the boy king whom Albrecht had to beg for his pension back. I don't think you could find a blacker painting with white lead than this. It speaks for itself. The black pigments were deadly, as too was the white lead. The presence of this portrait is documented in the 18th century in the gallery of the Elector of Bavaria. Because of its successive restorations, the top layer of color is missing. During the Diet of Augsburg in 1518, Durer portrayed Jacob Fugger in a charcoal drawing. The final painting on canvas differs from the drawing in the wealthier clothing of the subject, and, above all, in the framing. A half bust in the drawing, a half length in the painting. Everybody hated the Fuggers in Nuremberg. Blues, lead white, black, you got them all. And we had Emperor Maximilian. It's a beautiful, beautiful shade of green, completely encompassing the whole entire background of the painting. Look at how the green the background is, with the reds and the orpiment, the white lead and the black. Albrecht really hated this painting. Two prints tell us the biggest humiliations, and the emperor didn't even pay Albrecht for a year. Then we have the portrait of von Riesen, Bernhard von Riesen. The man in the portrait holds a message on which the first few letters of the name can be read. P is for Bern, the rest being hidden by the fingers of his left hand. This is almost certainly the painting which Durer refers to in his Antwerp diary in late March 1521, recording that he had made a portrait of Bernhard von Riesen in oils, for which he had been paid 8 florins. Durer's reference is probably to Bernhard von Riesen, a Danzig merchant whose family had important business likes with Antwerp. His name suggests that his family originated from Ries, a town on the Lower Rhine 100 miles east of Antwerp. Look how much red and black and white lead is in that painting. That will take us to the year 1521, the famous St. Jerome painting. Durer had painted St. Jerome while in Antwerp in 1521, and he presented the panel to his friend Rodrigo Ferdinand Zalamata. He wrote in his diary, "I painted a Jerome carefully in oils, and I gave it to Rodrigo of Portugal." The panel was displayed in the merchant's private chapel in Antwerp and was later taken back to Portugal. It is the only religious picture that Durer painted in the Netherlands. The figure of the saint is based on the drawing of an old bearded man. On the drawing, Durer inscribed, "The man was 93 years old, and yet healthy and strong in Antwerp." This is an extremely encoded print with many nasty messages. Look at the green, the red, the orpiment. We won't even get into the details of the hidden codes at this point, but just know that there are many, and this is a very important work. Then that leads us to the apostles Paul and Philippe. Could we get any more white lead in these paintings? Black, red, even the white lead lettering. And then it takes us to Michael Vogelmatt. After he had achieved much fame, Durer depicted the master who had taught him to paint, on it which he inscribed, "This portrait was done by Albrecht Durer of his teacher Michael Vogelmatt in 1516, to which he later added, and he was 82 years old, and he lived until 1519. That would have made him 85 at the time of death when he departed. On St. Anne's Day morning, before sunrise. It is unclear from the inscription whether Vogelmatt was 82 when he died, or when the portrait had been painted 3 years earlier. So that is up in the air still. The fact that the curators clearly say that Albrecht overpainted this painting with an additional inscription would have been enough to activate all the poisons. Look at how green and deadly the background is. All the black on the inscription is in orpiment. Deadly. Then we have the portrait of a man with a barret and a scroll. There is an inscription near his head, monogrammed and dated 1520, we're not sure. The last digit of the date is clearly legible as a 1 or a 4. But the fact that the panel is oak indicates that the painting must have been carried out during Durer's trips to the Netherlands. The hypotheses regarding the name of the subject are various. The most frequent are the one of Lorenz Sterk, an administrator and financial curator of the Brabant and of Antwerp, who was involved in getting Albrecht's pension back, and that of Jobst Plankveld, Durer's innkeeper at Antwerp. These names are frequently suggested since Durer writes in his diary that he had done oil portraits of him. It is difficult to imagine an innkeeper who made himself depicted with a scroll in his hand, whereas it seems much more plausible that the imposing subject characterized by a severe and scrutinized gaze, clad in a silk shirt, a cloak with a fur collar, and a large beret, corresponds to a tax collector. Then we have Lucretia. This panel is mentioned in the inventory dated 1598 of the Kunstkammer of Munich. The cloth around the hips was presumably expanded upward around 1600. The opinion that Lucretia, all things considered, was Durer's most unpopular work is undoubtedly widely shared. That's because it's an encoded painting. Lots of red, lead white, greenish gray, dead paintings, and surely intended for their patrons or donators. Stay tuned, more to come in part 3 for the conclusion of the 3-part series.